For LNS captioners, test.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 24th, 2025 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment. Those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials page of the city website. Thank you again for joining us. I now call the September 24th, 2025 work session of the Eugene City Council to order, and I will turn it right over to our city manager to introduce the first topic, which is a work session on the City of Eugene Charter review process and council requested research.
Thank you, Mayor. That was a great introduction. And Jason Dedrick has been working on this consistently over the last year plus and will lead us through a presentation and discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason Dedrick in the City Manager's Office. I'm here today to provide you an update on the charter review and amendment process. I will share my screen and we will get started on the presentation. Is that looking good? Great. All right. So, quick overview of I got to advance the slides. There we go. Of the presentation, what I'll do first is review your recent discussions about charter amendments. I'll share some of the research that you directed staff to provide, really just kind of at the high level, touch on some of the key research. The remainder of it is in your packet. And a reminder that there are 4 priority now topics that you selected to move forward for review. They are department head residency, language review, mayor and council compensation, and the vacancy appointment process. And then we're hoping that you'll be able to provide some direction to staff on each of those, and I'll talk about that more here in a minute. So a quick update on the charter. We have local authority to draft and amend a charter as an organization. We don't currently specify any regular charter review process, or nor is one required. There are 2 different ways to amend the charter. One is the way you're currently pursuing, which is council-initiated amendments by referral. The other way is citizen-initiated amendments by petition. In either case, both options are placed on the ballot for Eugene electors to decide. So a recap of your recent discussions on this topic. Back in February of 2024, you received an overview of past amendment processes to the charter. You discussed topics that you were interested in pursuing amendments on, and you directed staff to work one-on-one with counselors who had ideas on possible areas of review in the charter. Then in May of 2024, staff returned with a review of the feedback that we received from those meetings with each of you. You deliberated on that and determined 4 priority now topics that you wanted to move forward, and you directed staff to do research on each of those 4 topics to inform any potential amendments. So that research that staff did included reviewing the current charter language. It included reviewing researching other cities, and our focus was on the 6 largest cities in Oregon, not including Portland. And then we also looked at the League of Oregon Cities model charter. Often we'll end a presentation with a timeline, but because it matters for your process here today, we're going to lead with this, which is a reminder that if your intention is still to make the May 19th, 2026 general election, you'll need to be doing most of your deliberation, well, really all of your deliberation on any possible amendments to the charter over the next couple of months. Because before you go on break in December, you'll need to provide staff direction on actual resolutions that then you would take action on in January to make that February 18th referral deadline. And so in order to stay on that timeline, what we're really hoping to get from you today is a quick sense on these 4 topics of where you are. And so there are really 3 general options on each of the 4 topics. It could be that you have additional research that you'd like staff to do. It could be that you have everything you need to deliberate on any of those 4 topics and you're ready to bring those back for deliberation, or you may choose to not pursue changes to the charter at this time on any or all of those topics. So what I'll do now is quickly walk through each of the 4 priority now topics. And so this first one, department head residency. The overview of this is that the charter specifies that the offices of the manager and department heads may be filled from candidates outside the city, but while those individuals serve in those roles, they need to reside in the city. Similarly, all employees also have a similar requirement, except as the council authorizes the manager to prescribe to the contrary, i.e. that staff don't need to live within the city, and that is currently the provision that we're working under. In terms of research on this, none of the other comparison cities in Oregon have a residency requirement in their charter. For department heads, it's possible that they have it somewhere else in their operating language, but it is not in any of their charters. Based on feedback you provided previously, there are a few different options that you can take here. There may be others, but these are the ones that you've raised thus far. One option is to remove the residency requirement entirely from the charter. This is the only one of the 4 priority now topics that actually has a city manager recommendation, and the manager is recommending removing the residency requirement from the charter. Other options would be to remove the residency requirement only for the Eugene Springfield Fire Chief, given that that individual serves 2 cities. Another option would be to amend the requirement to add a mileage radius. This is something that you brought up last year in your discussions. Another option would be to remove the residency requirement from the charter and put it into ordinance. You'll see that show up on another one of your 4 priority now topics. Simply the idea of removing something from the charter and putting it into ordinance basically makes for future changes easier, since changing the charter has a pretty involved process. And then finally, your final option on this one could be that you choose not to pursue any changes to the residency requirement at this time. Next topic is language review. Topics around this that you've raised previously include addressing antiquated language in the charter, primarily binary gender pronouns, possibly addressing consistency or inconsistency in level of detail across the charter, and potentially including a definition of what the city's core services are in the charter. So staff research on this, 2 of the cities that we researched have amended their charter to address pronouns. None of the cities define core services in their charter, and none have amended their charters recently to address level of detail. Staff research on the charter shows that the most detailed sections of the charter are the amendments, which came after the initial body of the charter was adopted. The body itself is fairly consistent in its level of specificity. However, the amendments are in some cases much more detailed. So that may lead to the perception of inconsistency in detail across the charter. So some potential options here are amend to address general language updates, could be any of those 3 topics that you raised, or you could decide not to pursue changes to address general language updates at this time. Your third priority now topic is mayor and council compensation. Currently, mayor and councilors receive a stipend for their service. That stipend was initially set and has been adjusted each fiscal year based on the Consumer Price Index West. The current annual stipends for the mayor is just over $32,000, and stipends for councilors are just over $21,000 annually. Stipends are in addition to expense reimbursements that mayor and councilors receive. And mayor and councilors do not receive fringe health benefits, but however, health insurance can be purchased from the city. So looking at other cities, the current stipend that the mayor and councilors receive is slightly below that of other comparison cities. Several cities do not offer health insurance at all. For those that do offer health insurance, a higher percentage of the premiums are paid by the city compared to Eugene. Other non-stipend benefits are similar to what other cities provide. None of the cities set their compensation amount in charter. It's all dealt with in other documents. And then several cities use a citizen committee to review and set their compensation amounts. So your options here could include pursuing changes to the amount of compensation in the charter and leaving compensation in the charter. Another option could be to pursue changes to compensation, but remove the language from the charter and delegate oversight of future compensation to a citizen committee by ordinance, or you could choose to not pursue changes to compensation in the charter at this time. And then your final priority now topic was the mayor and council vacancy appointment process. Your current language includes filling vacancies by appointment within 90 days of when the vacancy occurs, and that person will hold office until their successor is elected. And then their variation based on when the vacancy occurs. If it's more than 100 days prior to the May election, an election will be conducted in the same year. If it's less than 100 days prior to the May election, the election would be conducted in the next year. In looking at what other cities are doing around vacancy appointments, it varies with many nuances. All of the cities initially fill their vacancies through council appointment. However, where things vary across cities are typically based on when the vacancy occurs in relation to upcoming elections. So some options here based on either your previous discussion or what other cities are doing. There could be other options than what is here. So it could be that the council continues to appoint that individual. They serve until the end of the term, regardless of when the vacancy occurs. Variations on this could be if it's less than 1 year, they would serve out the term. If it's more than 1 year, then serve until the next election. Another option could be you're appointing and that individual serves till the next general election. Another option is you're appointing and that individual serves till the next special election. And of course, you could choose to not pursue changes to the appointment process at this time. So wrapping up here, taking another look at the timeline for amendments. Here we are here, the September 24th work session, needing to provide final council direction prior to when you go on break in December. So really here through October, November is when any additional staff research, any of your discussions and deliberation on the topics would need to occur. And then taking action on any amendments to the charter via resolution in January. So that is it for my presentation. I'm going to kick it back to the mayor. As you move through each of these 4 topics, I will, I believe, at least the approach for now, remain in screen share mode and have on screen the first topic that you'll be discussing so that you can see the options. And then as we move through the topics, I'll change the slides. So back to you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that presentation. Council will open the floor to discussion in just a moment. As staff just indicated, our plan is to review each of these priority topics one at a time and then have on screen the different options related to each. So as we're walking through rounds, it would be helpful if you have indication of where you're landing that you'd like to share in that feedback, and it will help us to keep track so that we can build an appropriate motion for each one of those slides. I cannot see any hands raised at the moment. I'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I be happy to let others go first. Oh, Alan jumped in there too. Okay, and Randy. All right, excellent. All right. But the only thing that I have an interest in entertaining, I suppose is the right word, is the residency requirement issue. I look at that and I see, you know, if Springfield had the same rule, we'd have a heck of a problem with the citizen, you know, the issue of where a fire chief would live. So that I'm at least open to how to be just and fair in that discussion. I'm not terrifically interested in pursuing any of the others at this point. So it's my opinion.
Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, one by one, the department head's residency requirement. I agree that the fire chief is problematic, and that one probably needs to be changed. I'm in favor of that being a radius around Springfield and Eugene. And as for other department heads, I'm in favor of more of a hybrid mode. So if it's an existing person being promoted and they already live in this area, and they have a house and it's not in the city of Eugene, I'm in favor of a radius for existing positions being promoted into those. But if it's someone from the outside of this community that's moving here, I think we should have a requirement that they live within the city of Eugene. But I don't want to see someone move because they got promotion. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm in favor of kind of a hybrid on that one. not interested too much in the other three, although the vacancy one, I have no real strong opinion about that, except for it is somewhat problematic, and Lindsay can attest to this, that you have to run, if you're filling a vacancy, you have to run a series of elections and campaigns, potentially in quick succession. And maybe that the thing that we do there, and again, I don't have a strong opinion, is change the length of time before you have to run again, so that it's not that quick succession election and campaigns process that we've seen when Claire was recalled. So other than that, those are the four for me.
Thank you, Councilor Groves. I have you next, but I just want to check that our timer is running with council, and that you all can also see that. I wasn't sure if it were set between our first and second comments. If it did, my apologies to the body, because I would have just extended that round to Councilor Zelenka. But moving on to Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jason, for putting this before us in a very clear fashion. I have a proposal for this. I certainly understand why the ESF chief would be in a different setting, but if we lock ourselves in, it just makes a problem down the road if there's another service area that changes. How about just say the residency requirement is for the service area that department serves? And then it would still have some parameters. I think there is some benefit to living in an area that you're charged with serving. But at the same time, the way it's written now, it really gives, as we know, no flexibility at all. And I think that needs to be revisited. So I'd be fine with B, but I think it would be better just to make it for all service areas. Thank you.
And City Manager, do you want to jump in with an answer to a question or wait to the end of this round? Okay, thank you. Councilor Kaczynski.
Yes, I would be interested. Thank you for the presentation. This is one that I would be interested in moving forward to remove the residency requirement, especially given that none of the other places that we looked at included a residency requirement in their charter. I would be reluctant to try and come up with complex systems for how we navigate this in the charter. It seems like this is something that would be more appropriately regulated via an ordinance, as opposed to in the charter and trying to work out. So I'd be fine with just removing it. I'd be fine with removing a residency requirement from the charter and then putting it into an ordinance. I would not be fine with trying to replace the residency requirement with something more nuanced or different without a different forum for discussion of what that should be. Thanks.
Councilor Evans.
Let me unmute myself. What I can say is that I totally agree with where Councilor Kaczynski is coming from. I like the idea of having the flexibility of putting in an ordinance versus the charter. Charters are harder to change than ordinances are. And given our current situation, maybe future situation with housing availability and the type of property that somebody might be looking for, I want to have that flexibility built into this particular process and not have it memorialized in the charter. So with that being said, I totally agree with Councilor Kaczynski.
Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. My head's in the same place as Councilor Evans and Councilor Kaczynski. I'm supportive of an independent, community-driven commission to provide the oversight to make the proper recommendations and suggestions in regards to equitable compensation for council and mayor. It's woefully inadequate and frankly should be right-sized to be somewhere near the median income for the community. And I so I appreciate that recommendation in particular. I do think that residency should not be a barrier to employment, and frankly, the only 8 or 9 of us, including the mayor, should have the residency requirements. We should remove that as a barrier and recognize that the Eugene, Springfield, and broader community, whether it's south to Cresswell, or whether it's out west to Veneta and Elmira, or up north to Coburg or Junction City, we are one community, and to discourage folks from applying just because they don't live in said community, or mandate that they do live here if they do secure employment with our community, with our city, it is a potential barrier that I would like to see removed from our processes. So I'm in favor of exploring all and for the aforementioned pieces about making those changes easier, as referenced. I'm over. I'll stop. Apologies.
Thank you, Councillor. And my apology to the body in this format, having to adapt to a different interface. I cannot see the clock. So please keep your eyes on that if you can see it. Councillor Ye.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and no need to apologize. You're doing fantastic. We're all adapting to technology all the time. I just want to say I'm also in agreement about the residency. I don't think that it's something I would like to keep around. I see no reason, like Councillor Keating was saying, that someone who lives in Junction City can't fully represent Eugene in their job. They're kind of artificial boundaries, in my opinion, and I would not want to limit our ability to hire and keep a good candidate just because they happen to live in just slightly the wrong area. So that's the one I think that is the most important to take care of right now. Thanks.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I would like to see us removing the residency requirement. I'd be happy to look at it, putting it into an ordinance at some point if that was the majority of folks' opinion, but I think just removing it entirely is appropriate. And I would not mind taking a look at a citizen advisory committee for our compensation, more so looking at like even some of the operating agreements. And I think that Sarah, is that another work session that we'll be talking about operating agreements? Okay, I see a nod. Even though I was incredibly impacted by the requirements of the vacancy and all of the elections involved in that, I don't think we should be pursuing that at this time. So yeah, that's my time is up. Thank you.
Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, I think there actually is a case to be made for department heads, which are having to live in the city if they're moving here. I don't want to see people move, but if you did a mileage radius, say if you did within 25 miles, the Cottage Grove's 23 miles away, Veneta's 16, Junction City 17, so that fits within that mileage radius. But if you're new and you're moving here, I think there's a case to be made for, and I would like to see us adopt, that if you're going to move here and you're going to be serving the city of Eugene, you're going to be working here, and you're going to be using the services, that you live in the city. That might be a little bit constricting, but for new people, I don't think it's that constricting. I think that makes sense. I'd rather not see people move if they get promoted, but having someone move here as a new department head and move to Cottage Grove doesn't make sense to me.
Councillor, councillors, I should say all of you, I can now see the timer, so I'm going to be able to keep a little bit closer track. We have Councillor Clark and Councillor Evans, and then I'm going to ask City Manager Mederi to offer the comments that she has. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to sing the virtues and of our current fire chief to say that he did in fact move from Cottage Grove to Eugene in order to become fire chief, and I assisted him with that, and I was happy to. My question is for Jason or for Catherine, and I'm not sure. If there are multiple changes, if we agree to want to change one more than one of these items, the question is, would we need to have all of those changes covered in one question on the ballot, or would it be multiple questions for multiple votes on the ballot?
It would be multiple questions. There would be multiple ballot items, because you could very much have a situation where someone would want to vote yes on one and no on another. So it would absolutely, you would have separate resolutions that you refer, and those would be separate ballot titles.
Exactly the reason for my question. Thank you very much. My feelings would be are such that I would be willing to alter to consider a radius, or as Randy suggested, but I don't feel that strongly about it one way or another. Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
I just want to point out one thing here. Several years ago, and it hasn't been that long ago, I had a hire that came in from outside of the community, and this person could not find housing in Eugene or Springfield that met his financial needs. He ended up getting a place in Cresswell, and then later moving into the Eugene Springfield area, the metro area. But I would rather have this done in ordinance rather than done by the charter, so that we can have that flexibility when people we're hiring come in from outside the community or even inside the community and have a tough time finding rental housing or permanent housing in the community. So, you know, when we're ready to move forward, I'm ready to move forward with a motion supporting putting this into ordinance.
Thank you, Councillor. City Manager, I see Councillor Groves has had one more round, and then I'll come to you for a question, and then we'll recap where we are, I think, on this first priority topic of the residency requirement.
Thank you, Mayor. I spoke earlier about, you know, my suggestion that maybe we look at service area as opposed to city, but I also didn't address the charter versus ordinance. I think this, I agree with the sentiment of moving this out of the city charter. I don't think this needs to be there. And if we feel strongly about defining an area that's acceptable, then I think that can be placed into ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Mederi, do you want to answer a question? And then we'll move, I think, to our second.
I wasn't going to answer a question. I was just going to offer my opinion, since I get to do that sometimes. I think this is an antiquated way to establish this, and it puts Eugene at a real competitive disadvantage, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. We have real life examples of execs on our team that have had to sell and uproot their families to move into the city at great cost to themselves. I'm surprised they did it. And we've also had candidates that have not been able to compete, that live in the area, not in Eugene, that are other very qualified candidates that may live in Springfield or Cottage Grove and have not been able to apply or come to this job. So I just think, you know, if you want to put it in ordinance, that's fine. But I think it's a real problem to have 7 employees of all of your employees have that requirement.
Thank you, City Manager. Councillor Zelenka, and then I'm going to offer a recap, and we'll be requesting a motion, I believe, in a moment. Council President. Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, so just a quick question. Maybe someone can outline the process of putting something into ordinance and taking it out of the charter. So you have to do a ballot measure, then you have to do the public hearing on an ordinance, and then create that, provided it passes. Correct?
That is correct. I mean, you could remove it once it's removed from the charter, whether you ultimately decide to move it to ordinance would be entirely within your purview. You could have it removed to charter and then just say, you know what, we're going to leave it as no requirement at all. And just intend at a later date if you wanted to look at ordinance, or you could do it consecutively where it came out of the charter and then you immediately move to ordinance. It would be entirely within your discretion.
Right. And right, if you had a radius, Sarah's concern might be go away, but if someone's moving here from out of state or someplace, that would be different, I think, and should be considered. I don't care if it's an ordinance or a charter.
Thank you, Council. So just to briefly recap on that first priority topic, the majority of the body has expressed an interest in removing the residency requirement from the charter. There's some discussion about the next steps and whether or not that would be adopted into an ordinance. But that would give us a path in terms of direction today. And Council President, I will turn to you to put a motion on the table.
Thank you, Mayor. Move to direct the city manager to draft a resolution and schedule a work session on department head residency. To remove the residency requirement from the charter, to remove the residency requirement only for the Eugene Springfield fire chief. I believe that's why we've got ESF in this. To amend the residency requirement to add a mileage radius.
Councilor Evans, these are ORs.
The ORs. Okay.
These are the A, B, C, and D are ORs.
Gotcha.
So if you want to,
okay. I'm going to edit this.
Okay.
So to go back, I'm not going with C, removing the mileage, amend the residency amendment to add mileage radius. I'm not going to put that in, but to remove the residency requirement from the charter and put into ordinance. So those three things: remove the residency requirement from the charter, to remove the residency requirement only for Eugene Springfield Fire Chief. Do we really need that?
No.
City Attorney?
No, Councilor Evans, I would recommend you pick one of the four to put on the table. So if you want to just,
I got that. I got it.
Okay.
Okay. So the one that I'm picking is remove the residency requirement from the charter and put into ordinance.
Second.
Is that helpful?
Thank you, Councilor. Council discussion. Councilor Ye?
Yeah, so I'm totally in favor of removing the residency, but I'm not thrilled about putting it in order. I would just like to get rid of it. So did this motion require us to then create an ordinance? Because it kind of sounds like it.
it definitely, it says, I mean, you could amend the motion just to say, maybe a friendly that says, and consider putting it into ordinance.
I could live with that if Greg's could live with that.
I'm good with that.
Is the second acceptable to the adding of the consider?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, councilors. Councilor Clark.
Just a question for clarity, was that just ESF or all executives or the requirement in general? The motion itself, Greg, was that for all?
It would be in general. That would be for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for Council President. Councilor Evans, do you intend to also make a second motion that revolves around language review and mayor and council compensation?
That will be our next topic for discussion, I believe.
Yes, we are still moving, Councilor Keating. We're still moving to those discussion topics with council.
Yeah, great. I just didn't want us to take one action and leave the others on the table. So, great.
We're not commingling anything.
Thank you all. So we have a motion to remove the residency requirement from the charter and consider putting it into ordinance at a future date. That has been seconded. Any last or additional discussion from council on this item? Seeing none, I'll now take a vote. And all in favor? This may take me a moment because you know, rearranging on my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And Councillor Keating?
I'm trying. Tell me yay.
There you are, 8. So, and the motion passes by a vote of 8-0. Thank you so much. And thank you, staff, for helping us to keep track. Moving on to the second priority topic, the language review. Similarly, we have different options, one to pursue, to request additional information, one to pursue amendments, and one not to pursuing changes. I'm on the right page in my own documents. Any discussion from council?
I think you've got Councillor Kaczynski waving her hand.
Thank you, Councillor Kaczynski.
Yes, so thank you. The antiquated language seems pretty straightforward, and if we're going through all of the work of putting something on the ballot anyway, might as well kind of do some of that cleanup at the same time. The other two, the consistency and level of detail and including core services, those seem to go beyond basic language review to me. Those feel more substantive, and I wouldn't be interested in moving those forward without a more thorough discussion, including citizen review and things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leach.
I agree with Councillor Kaczynski. If we are putting something on the ballot, let's clean up the language, but I'm not at this point. So for number A, I'm not interested in B or C at this time.
Other discussion from council? Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think 2A is a no-brainer. As far as consistency and level of detail and including core services, I'm fine coming at this from a different direction, but I think part of the problem we have now is everything is number one on the priority list. We have no set of priorities to follow. And I think that makes it very difficult when we come for budget reductions and other things. I mean, at some point, we're going to have this discussion. I'm less concerned with where that discussion is and where it ends up as part of one of our operating documents. Thank you.
Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, I don't understand what removing the antiquated language actually would do. So I don't know what I would be voting for. It's not specific enough for me. Can someone explain that better? Jason, Sarah?
I can explain the intent. It may be that you need more detailed motion language, but the primary thing that came up in council discussion were references to he and she gender pronouns and broadening those to sort of match, and it would be similar to what other cities have done. So kind of cleaning up that language was the primary thing. So yeah, maybe the motion isn't around antiquated language, or I suppose your motion today could be antiquated language, but the actual resolution to amend the charter would probably say something more specific about what you would be doing.
Like getting rid of his or her.
Right. Yeah. So I'll defer to the attorney.
To what?
Yeah.
What would it change to?
It would include that as well. I mean, in many cases, it would be choosing general neutral pronouns like they or theirs.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel very strongly, as Councillor Groves does, that that it is a good idea for us to have the community speak about what we include in the idea of core services, because we will have difficult choices moving forward. I just think that it's possible, rather than putting something in the charter, that the community's sentiment of core services may change with time, or a charter is designed intentionally not to change over time. And so I'd rather get that information by means of survey work, I suppose, than I would by means of cementing it into the charter for all times. So I would probably be less in favor of doing that. And on the antiquated language thing, I have a similar feel for that. I understand the reasons why there are many people who would want to change the language. My sentiment is that this is a permanent document, and okay, maybe, creating a more neutral language is a good idea. I'm ambivalent on it, but I don't know that I want to permanently put in the charter what are core services and what are not. Thank you.
City Manager.
Yeah, two quick things. You will be, as part of your long-term financial stability conversation in your workshop, one of the things Twyla had brought up is you do have actually an area in your financial policies and procedures manual, which we don't revisit very often, that does say what the city's priorities and funding should be. And so you'll have an opportunity to relook at that and get community feedback if you'd like. And I would just say the language piece, I think, as we looked around the country, as we heard from you, looked around the country, there certainly are cities where there was still a lot of language that had race implications, gender implications, and things. And we just want to make sure, and I think what we heard from you is like, let's just make sure that's not in there. And it could be really simple, not a big complex process.
Thank you, City Manager. Council President, I will turn to you for a motion. I've heard a lot of consistency from Council around amending to address the language updates. And I just see that Councillor Zelenka has raised his hand. So just one moment, Council President. Councillor Zelenka. Oh, thank you, Councillor.
You mute yourself, Councillor.
Oh, mine was about a different topic, which was I don't want to put something on the ballot where we're the only thing on the ballot and it costs us $60,000 to do it, and make sure we do it when it's low cost. But that's different.
Thank you. Council President, would you please put a motion forward?
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Move to direct the city manager to draft a resolution and schedule a work session on language review to address antiquated language.
Second.
The second. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, I will now take a vote for this motion. And I see 8 hands. The motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you, council. Moving on to our third topic, but also I want to note that we were aware that today's agenda is very full with some pretty detailed work, and then also an important update as our second agenda item on fire governance. We could spend a few more minutes discussing the 2 remaining priority topics, or we could break at this point and move over to discuss the Eugene Springfield fire governance. My sense is that there may be, I never want to presume the amount of discussion that council will want to have about either of these 2 remaining issues. We did hear some feedback of interest in the first round, but I would be willing to pause our discussion at this point with the feedback we have and come back. City Manager, do you have a preference?
Yeah, Mayor, I don't have a presentation for the fire governance. I'm just giving an update, letting people know where we're at and what we're going to do this fall. So you probably could spend another 10 minutes for sure.
Okay. Council, with 10 more minutes, let's move on to the third of these priority topics, which is mayor and council compensation. And staff, thank you for putting the slide of those options. Option 1, to direct additional research. Option 2, to pursue amendments and bring back deliberation. And option 3, to not pursue charter amendments on this topic. And I see Councilor Kaczynski.
I am not interested in pursuing charter amendments on this topic at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
I was interested in being open to the discussion up front and probably would still be willing to have the discussion. However, I can't see the wisdom of moving forward with putting a question to the general public because my belief is the answer would be, oh, heck no. Okay. I think we endanger the other things we put on the ballot to the degree that we even ask the question. So I would encourage my colleagues not to put this question on the ballot at this time. Thank you.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with both Councilor Clark and Councilor Kaczynski. I just don't think now's the time to even be having this discussion, given our financial situation and knowing that there are more challenges before us. Thank you.
Councilor Evans.
Well, given the tone and tenor of the conversation, I'm ready to move forward with the motion. Not to pursue.
Thank you, Council President. I'll be with you in just a moment. Councilor Keating.
Thanks, Mayor. I would just indicate that those are comments from 3 councilors. The rest of us haven't had a chance to weigh in, and I vehemently, respectfully disagree with the sentiments or statements that my colleagues have made. This is a matter of parity. It's a matter of equity. If we want to see a more diverse array of people run for office, that at all levels of government, that public service needs to be fairly and or fairly and equitably allocated. Or it's woefully inadequate and it's embarrassingly low. I encourage my colleagues to at least advance the conversation to put it to ultimately to a vote of the public. I think you would find yourself pleasantly surprised in this progressive community that fair and equitable compensation for elected officials is an appropriate ask and an appropriate action.
I see Councilor Ye and then Councilor Leach and Councilor Kaczynski. I will come back to you at the beginning of the second round. Councilor Ye.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with Councilor Keating. I
think we may have lost Councilor.
I do think that. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Councilor Ye, you may need to turn off your video. It's just you're breaking up a little bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, is it working now?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I agree that there are many barriers to people running. The idea that anyone can run for city council and do this job is not accurate. And there are many people that would not be able to do this and also hold a job to be able to pay their rent and basic needs. So I do think it's a conversation we need to have. I don't know if I think it's a larger conversation though than just about compensation. And I'm not sure if this is the way to do it, but I'm interested to hearing what other folks think.
Councilor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with Councilor Keating. And part of that is because of a lot of the communication that I've gotten from the community, from my constituents about how much effort and time that they expect and want for us to be addressing all of the challenges that we are seeing in our community. And to do that on a very small stipend is very difficult. And it is an equity thing. It is a participation in government. And so I would want it to come from a citizen committee, whether this is a topic that we bring up in the next election or some other time. I do think it's something that we should be talking about and addressing with our community and what their expectations are for what we are able to accomplish. So if that is moving to direct to additional staff research, I would be willing to put that forward, or a number of other things, but that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Councilor Zelenka and then Councilor Kaczynski.
Yeah, I don't think it's ripe for putting a motion out about the charter change, but I don't have a problem with having staff doing more research and bringing back some other options to council about this topic, including potential ordinance or for a citizen committee or something like that. But I think it merits a lot more discussion than what we're having right now. So pursuing it a little bit further is a good idea, but I don't think we should put it on the charter, especially at this time.
Councilor Kaczynski.
Yes, I was brief to start with because in the interest of time, but my job, which that's not this, which we pretty much all of us have, because as Councilor Leach pointed out, this is not a position that pays a living wage, is surrounding compensation, how much to compensate people, and includes how much to compensate elected officials. And I would say that particularly for elected officials' compensation, where I've seen that happen is it's very frequently citizen advisory committees will advise on rates, on methodologies, on things like that. If we want to, on what expectations are, on what are comparables, if we want to pursue something like that, I would be open to hearing what such a group has to say. But this is not an issue that is ripe to put on the charter right now, put out to the ballot right now.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. It's red letter day. I agree with both Eliza and Alan that this is not the right time for us to put this on the question of altering the charter to the general public. But I would be, Greg, interested in directing this towards future discussion of an informed committee, bringing back more information and making it more of a community conversation where others can weigh in. But at this point, putting it on the ballot as a question, it would appear, whether it's fair to say or not, it would appear, in my opinion, self-serving at a time where we are facing some potential revenue challenges additionally to what we've faced already in the past. And I think there are a lot of hard decisions ahead, and it's just the wrong time for us to put this particular question of changing the charter on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you all. Councilor Evans, I've heard a lot of discussion around the idea of a future conversation and engagement with a citizen advisory committee or review, and also not interest in advancing this as a ballot question at this point. But I will look to you to put a motion forward.
Mayor, I'm not seeing total consensus around this yet, but I think that having additional staff research would be appropriate in this venue, basically because I don't think that we have enough information on comparables and what other communities and other cities are doing, whether that's within the state of Oregon or nationally. And a lot of things will not be, it's an apples to oranges comparison, because we're not Chicago, we're not New York. At the same time, we're not Medford either. So the solution to this is more in, I would say, be embedded into a citizen committee. But in lieu of us making that decision, I would move to direct additional staff research.
Second.
And can I see clarification for staff that I know will ultimately start this work, which is that additional staff research and coming back to you for another work session would not be in anticipation and on a timeline that would allow for this charter amendment to allow for a charter amendment to move forward in May. Is that okay? I'm seeing head nods.
Yeah, that's okay, Catherine, because I think that this is a longer discussion than what, and a more involved discussion with the community than what we're having right now.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I made the motion. I think Lindsay seconded it.
Thank you. That was the clarification I was requesting. So we have a motion and a second. I'll take a vote on this motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In favor, Councillor Groves, you're the one vote that I did not see raised.
I oppose.
Thank you. And the motion passes 7-1. Thank you, Council. We will break at this point in our discussion and come back to the final priority area related to changes to the charter. And with that, this completes our first agenda item. And I'm now going to turn it back over to the city manager to provide us with an update on our Eugene Springfield fire governance process.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm really just intending to provide a short update on what is a significant and important project, mostly to share plans for the fall and make sure you have an opportunity to share any feedback and questions you have prior to our next set of meetings. So I don't have a slide deck. I'm just going to share info with you. As a reminder, just over a year ago, we had a presentation from an outside consultant, AP Triton, who had conducted a feasibility study on different governance models for Eugene Springfield Fire. As you know, we undertook this study to explore models that could solve some of the challenges of running what we've called a functionally merged department that have continued, either challenges that have continued or new challenges that have developed over, I think, the last 18 years. This, that just points out if this was a clear and easy fix, we would have already done it. I'm pretty sure there's somebody on this Zoom screen who would have carried this forward had it been simpler. I want to acknowledge while we're talking about this, the amount of stress that has been carried by many as this has stayed unfixed, in particular our command staff and our chief. Not that it hasn't had impacts on everyone, but it is certainly hard on that level in the organization. And I also want to acknowledge the exceptional service that Eugene Springfield Fire provides to our community and our region, despite the uncertainty and the complexities. This conversation has never been about their excellent service, and they have continued to provide that. When we left off last July, I made it clear to you that we were going to need to explore some of the unintended consequences of a new model. I have a lot of trust in the consultant. They did really good work, but they can also only go so far in understanding the implications of some of the recommendations across the larger system and organization and across the two cities. Both Nancy and I, Springfield City Manager, have a responsibility to evaluate all of that in order for you to make each city to sort of make a decision about where they want to go. As you know, we spent a lot of time through the fall. So we came back into the fall. We spent a lot of time trying to resolve a pretty significant budget gap. And as part of that, trying to also provide new and more stable funding for Eugene Springfield Fire. I'm going to say this, no matter what model is chosen going forward, I think it's important to recognize we need to be making investments into Eugene Springfield Fire. It's not the kind of service, when I was out talking to the community, it's not a kind of the service that you need to be reactively funding. It needs to be very proactive. We need to be ready for the things before they happen. That revenue work, when that revenue work went to turned into an election measure, as you know, that sort of came off the table, and for us to be able to talk about it, I know it's been very frustrating for some to have waited a year. It's frustrating to me as well. What I'm hoping to do this fall is be able to bring back to you more information, deeper dive into some of the unintended consequences in order to allow you to potentially make a decision on direction before the end of the year. That's my hope. That's my goal. As a reminder, the models that were being explored were staying the same. So continuing in our intergovernmental agreement, one of the models was one city contracting with the other, establishing an intergovernmental entity, IGE, which is different than an IGA. People point to the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission as an example of that. When we dive deeper into the fall, I will explain how these two models will be very different, but that's essentially what we point towards. Forming an independent fire district and dissolving the functional merger and going back to both cities having their own fire department. At the time of the last meeting, the consultant did say their recommendation was they felt the intergovernmental entity best met most of the desired outcomes that they heard from the stakeholders. Since that time, I've asked a number of questions and asked questions of the consultant. In fact, we'll be meeting with him again this week around how it could actually work and putting some real live problems and particular budget problems into that model and trying to figure out how you would resolve that. At the same time, I want to acknowledge you heard it at the budget committee table, you've heard it at the public forum, you've heard it in emails, a lot of folks that are pushing for us to explore an independent new taxing district more fully. As your city manager, I don't know how any of us will be able to move forward without studying that a little bit farther. In particular, because we have a number of employees that are asking us to do it, and even just based on morale and confidence in leadership, I think it's going to be important that we look at that. So right now we have a city council work session, 90 minutes held on October 22nd, that will help us guide towards a decision. As you also know, through this process, in particular the process with a consultant, we had a advisory group, which was 2 Eugene city councilors, 2 Springfield city councilors, and both city managers, that was led by LCOG or facilitated by LCOG. That group typically met and explored and advised us before we came to council. We intend to bring that group back together, trying to determine what information we'll provide them, but we'll meet with that group before we're back in front of you in October. So the intent today was really just to let you and the public know this conversation's coming and give you an opportunity to say anything or share any thoughts prior to our diving back in this fall. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor. Or not. I'll turn it over to myself again.
Thank you all. Thank you for that presentation, City Manager. I will now open up the floor to council discussion. And Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. I look forward to trying to get this thing brought to a conclusion, like I think we all do. But it just feels like it's drug on for an awfully long time, and I understand that there are reasons why it has, and I think part of the discussion when we get to our next presentation is being able to share some of the information on what has delayed the process, because I think there's a real misunderstanding amongst those who understand what it is we're trying to do. The question keeps coming up of why is this taking so long? And I think that's just going to be part of the bringing transparency and credibility to the process. I do appreciate you putting a pause long enough to take a look at the district piece. I think there's some questions that need to be answered on that, but if we don't fully vet that like we have the other options, I think we lose credibility there as well as maybe walking away from a viable solution, although we won't know that until the additional analysis is done. So thank you for that. Thank you for moving this forward. I do look forward to the rest of the process and re-engaging as seeing the subcommittee re-engaging on the issue of governance. Thank you.
Other counselors would like to offer feedback? City Manager Maderi, I will offer that in community conversations, there's a lot of interest in this work. There is understandably a lot of concern about access to emergency services and the capacity of our fire department to respond to challenges that we face. There are also a lot of questions that I have not been in a position to answer, speaking to the information that you just described around the various costs and benefits of these different strategies that are before council, and that is contemporary, and that we have we have an excellent report from Triton to build this conversation from, but I know current information also to be added to that discussion, and so I also look forward to our 90 minutes on the 22nd of October, and to beginning to build a shared understanding of the alternatives and how they compare with one another, and what the benefits of each are, and how we work towards a sustainable strategy for our emergency responders and our fire response. City Manager.
You know, I was just raising my hand because if there's not a lot of questions and feedback, I just want to suggest one of the reasons it takes a long time is it's actually hard to get on your calendar because you have a lot of topics. You could take a backseat and finish your charter conversation. I just wanted to suggest that before you ended the meeting. Then we wouldn't have to schedule that again.
I would be happy to return to that discussion for our final priority topic if council is willing. City Attorney, please let me know if there's anything specific we need to do to return to an agenda item.
Nope, I see. I was going to say, get Jason, and see he just popped on. So
Still here.
Perfect.
Thank you to staff for also adapting today to changing circumstances. With that, then I will close this council discussion on this update related to Eugene Springfield Fire Governance, and we will return to our discussion of the charter process and priorities. And the final item for discussion, staff, if you already have that on screen, is the mayor and council vacancy appointment process. Let's use the same structure of discussion as previous and try to identify in rounds the direction that council would like to pursue, and then we'll have a motion put forward by our council president at the end. So discussion of mayor and council vacancy appointment process. Councilor Kaczynski.
My understanding is that this was relatively recently amended based on a community committee that went through it and came up with a recommendation. I think we have seen that the process didn't really work, I think, the way that it was intended. I think it was intended to have a vote before, 3-4 years from now, not to have appointed counselor have to run 3 elections in a row within a year. I think it is worth exploring how we could further improve this. I don't think it's ready for us to be doing that via a charter amendment that would go out in May. So, I think continued thought about what that change might more specifically look like, but not moving it to a charter amendment right now.
Other councilors and an indication for this motion. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilor Kaczynski. I have to say, I'm not 100% sure of the problem we would be solving for by putting something on the ballot. So I would be interested in further discussion of how to make this particular process better in the future, certainly. But I don't know that there is a clear direction for that. So I'm reticent to put the question on into this timeline scenario towards a charter amendment when I don't understand clearly what problem we're solving for. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. I believe we have two councilors who've indicated an interest in not pursuing charter amendments on this topic at this time. Any additional comments from council before requesting? Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I don't think it's right for charter on the May ballot, but I do want to have conversation. And if we do it in a timely fashion, we might be able to put it on the charter or on the same ballot. I'd hate to have it be a standalone thing, but it is a cleanup that probably should be made. Having someone, I don't think it's in the public interest to do 3 elections in the same year, for instance. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's a waste of resources, a waste of time, it's a waste of effort on a lot of people's parts. Especially when all 3 of the outcomes are exactly the same. So that's the problem. I think that it's just a matter of what's the public interest in having run 3 elections in the same short period of time. So if we can solve that and fix that, maybe it's as simple as moving the date. You know, other cities have done that when we look at that. So maybe it's that simple. So if we could get more information back, we can decide whether or not to put that on the ballot. I think the deadline is December before we make changes that would go into the May 26th ballot for this ballot measure, right? So we might be able to resolve this by then.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm thinking along the same lines as Councilor Zelenka. And I would add that there could be a statewide fix that would change when a recall would happen. If a recall election were to take place on a regularly scheduled election date, a special, a primary, or a general election, we wouldn't have this problem of, or a problem that one of our colleagues in Ward 7 realized in regards to her consecutive multiple elections after being duly appointed and then elected and then having to run for re-election. So I think there is a problem and it needs to be cleaned up. So similar to the action that we took on the last piece around compensation, I would encourage colleagues to support more information and pathways about how and when we could best clean that up. But I concur it doesn't rise to the top of the crop of urgent needs for this May's ballot.
Councilor Clark, before I return to you, City Attorney, I'm going to ask a clarifying question. So one of the options before Council is to pursue amendments and bring back for deliberation. The Council will still have the option to decide what actually goes forward to the ballot after that additional information in these coming months. Is that correct?
Well, so there's a little bit of a timing problem because if you want to actually pursue amendments that would appear on the May ballot, we need some specificity from you to write up the resolution that you would need to adopt and come back with that resolution that you could deliberate in. Now, you could choose then not to move it forward, but doing additional staff research to propose some options would include another work session in between, and also then that's at a decision that you would make to pursue amendments, and the timeline's just pretty tight for that, knowing what you've got on your calendar between now and the end of the year and with Sarah's departure at the end of the year. So I would recommend kind of looking at these as 2 very distinct paths. Additional research, like you have requested for the compensation, and that's a date uncertain of when that actually comes back to you. It'll be based on your agenda. It will have no bearing regarding the May election. The other path is you pick one of these A, B, or C's, and what comes for pursuing amendments and what comes back for your discussion is actually a resolution for you to consider and talk about, of whether it's going to go forward to the May ballot. But kind of a general do research for consideration of the May ballot is probably the hardest for staff to accommodate, knowing what your agenda looks like.
Thank you, City Attorney. Exactly the information that we needed. Councilor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The reason I said what I did was I wasn't sure what problem we were solving for. Is you can't control, to the best of my understanding, with complete specificity when a recall election or when other a vacancy may take place. There's not a way to do that with a great degree of specificity. And so it has different impacts with this timing. If what we're trying to solve for is running X number of campaigns in a row within a certain time frame, I think we're getting into a pretty complex matrix of when this sort of thing could take place. Thus, again, I'd be interested or willing to have a further discussion about what we might do, but I don't think, because of the complexity of it, it's something we're going to be able to bring back with specificity for a charter within the current charter timeframe in the fall. Thank you.
And Councillor Evans, or a motion if you are prepared.
Two things. One is a quick comment. I understand, you know, what my colleague in Ward 7 went through, because I went through the same thing 12 years ago when I was appointed to council when Councillor Farr became commissioner. So I had to run, you know, go through the appointment process and the interview, run basically 2 elections, and then a 3rd election, you know, in November of that year. I think that this requires us to have further discussion if we're going to make any kind of changes. But I don't think now is the time to have that discussion, simply because we have other priorities for council on the plate right now. And so my motion would be, and I'm not making it yet, I'm just waiting for a little bit more feedback, is to not pursue a charter amendment on this topic at this time.
That is consistent with what I heard from council as well, Council President, and that there's a desire for additional information, but not a date certain for that information, and this would not go forward for the May 26 issues.
Precisely. So you want me to go ahead and make the motion, Mayor?
Yes, please, Council President. Oh, Councilor Zelenka.
So there were 2 parts to that. One is not on the May ballot because we don't have time for it. I agree with that. But the second part wasn't clear to me, that, and it should be put on our agenda for further discussion. So if your motion could clarify that, Greg, that we will bring it back, that's a good, I'd be supportive of that.
I think I can do that. So I would move to direct additional staff research and not to pursue charter amendments on this topic at this time. Would that be clear enough?
Pretty clear for a blurry kind of guy.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Thank you, Council. Any additional discussion of the motion? Seeing none, I'll now take a vote for this motion. All in favor? 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I can see all of you. 8. Thank you all so much. In every possible format, 8 in favor, 0 opposed, and the motion passes. Thank you all very much for this discussion and for looping back. That concludes our agenda for today. Councillor Evans, did you have anything to add at the end?
No.
Just wanted to be sure, just saw your hand. Thank you so much. Then I will now close our September 24th, 2025 City Council work session, and we are adjourned. Thank you.